Okay, we are live. Hello everyone. I don't think we have anyone in the chat room just yet, but I think it'll fill up a little bit later on.
All right.
No, we don't have anyone in the chat, but we are live. I see myself talking, and we have arrived to our weekly chat about Game of Thrones. This is our late night live stream. I'm here with Lady Wolverton and Lord of the Last Heart. Hey guys, how you doing?
Doing well, doing well. I'm excited to do Brand 2 tonight because when I did a reread earlier, well, yesterday, and then I was thinking about it today, um, there's a lot of stuff. Like I said, every time when I read something several times and then put it down for a while and come back to it, a lot of times I get something different out of it.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I find myself not being able to grasp everything the first time, but the second or third time around, I can really get a handle on it, and it is great. It's a wonderful, wonderful chapter. We're doing Brand 2 tonight. You two want to do your introductions?
I'm Lady Wolverton from the Lady Wolverton's Den, and everybody just calls me Jen. Let's have a good chat.
Hey everybody, it's Tony, Lord of Last Hearth. Catch me at Lord of Last Hearth. We're just glad that I could be part of this brand two chapter. It's a really good chapter. Probably one of my favorites in the first book because it's so telling, and you get to see the events that unfold with Bran and his introduction, pretty much on the path to getting to the Three-Eyed Raven.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It's a very, very crucial chapter. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we had a guest on our show, the Sword in the Darkness, and she said that in one of the chapters, is it the Catelyn chapter? I think it was the Catelyn chapter, and it was the first chapter that signified uh, a hinge, a turning point. And this was also a chapter that was made a really, really big turn in the storyline. Nothing is ever going to be the same again after this chapter. Everything is going to be changed. This is the pretty much the end of the good time. You know, these first few chapters have been, the good times, for our characters, for the Starks. They signified, the goodness in the world and the goodness in their lives. But with the introduction of the Lannisters, the Lannisters made things a little bit worse, and they're going to make things very, very worse and very, very bad for our favorite family, the Starks. Tonight we are doing Brand 2. Bran is a 7-year-old boy, and he is the middle son of Catelyn and Eddard Stark. Um, before I do my overview, do you both wanna say something about it? Any observations that you caught?
Yeah, I think even we're doing brand too, but what I always thought was very significant is that the other than the prologue, the very first point of view we get is Bran. Now, if you
Yeah,
look at like the scheme of things with the political part of it, like Bran, and you don't know yet because it's the first book, and if you haven't, if you watch the show, if you're going by those first, that first book, you don't know yet what Bran's path is. So to most people, he seems like, why do they have this insignificant son of a lord in the north, not just having the first chapter, but having a lot of chapters that are very telling because his path to the three-eyed raven, three-eyed crow in the book, it's a very long path that takes many steps, and it literally took 5 books for us to get to see where that path led to. And it still really isn't much telling behind. Like because of the show, we get a little bit of a see into it. But like in the book, he literally is gone for like a whole book, and then all of a sudden he just pops up and he's doing like Jedi training with Three Eyed Raven. We don't even know what's in store for him. Like, I would want to say that the Hodor thing to hold the door would be you know, in the book too, because that's just such a big thing for how like he got his name. I can't see them going away from that in the book like they would do for a lot of things in the show. But it's weird because like George does a good job of making somebody seem so insignificant, and then all of a sudden you're like, man, this is why they've invested so many chapters. It's same thing with John in the beginning. You just think, why are they showing this illegitimate child of this lordling from the north? And then when you see where the path leads and how long that path is, just like Jen said, every time I'm on the third time going around reading this. Like I told myself I wanted to try to get everything again in at least the 5 books that are out so it's more fresh in my mind when Winds finally does come out. So it's like every time I read this book, every chapter I read, when I read it again, I always find something that I either forgot about or missed, or that's way more significant than I first thought.
Yeah, absolutely. You can. Yeah, this is definitely a book series that you can find something new in every chapter. We've got Shelley here. Hey, Shelley, what's up?
I'm good. Turn around and I finished dinner. It was chorizo with jasmine rice and some cheese. So
I like chorizo, but it really gives me bad heartburn.
Oh yeah, it's greasy as hell.
go finish eating or put it in the refrigerator.
Yes, we are here and we're talking about Bran 2. Jennifer, do you have any observation that you want to talk about before I start my overview?
I do. I just want to say this. I think that, well, like I was saying last week with Arya, I think Arya is exactly where she's supposed to be. I don't think that the Faceless Men wanted her to be no one. I think they wanted her to do exactly what she did, which is receive their training and go back to the north, or go back wherever she's going back in the books, and put it to use. And same thing with Bran, like just rereading the chapter, I was just picking up on some things. He was never meant to go south, and he didn't go. Now, it's tragic what happened to him, but I just keep thinking, they say that people who cannot see have much more perceptive hearing or whatnot, or people who cannot hear see things other people don't see. I think that what has happened to him is only going to elevate his training as not only a warg, but as a green seer in the new Three-Eyed Raven.
Yes, Bran, is a very, very special boy. And I agree with you, Lord, that it is very interesting that he had the first chapter, outside of the prologue. It was very interesting to see all of this from a boy's eyes. But as we get to go into the chapters, we see how special he is, and it's not just because of his warging ability and his abilities as a green seer and so forth, but he's just special, in and of itself. Some people have I've always felt that some people have a mystical quality to them already without any help, from anything or anyone. And I just believe that Bran on his own, without all of his abilities, has a mystical quality, and that's a rare quality in a person.
Right, and in my opinion too, like we all look at John and Danny being the the stereotypical hero of the story, but I think when it comes to the amount of the percentage of of each person when it comes to this greater thing at the end with the White Walkers War for Dawn, I think nobody's going to play a bigger part than Bran. Might not be on the battlefield swinging the sword, but it's going to take a lot of Bran's knowledge and what he can see to help them and to get them prepared. It's almost like I was talking to somebody else where it's like the equivalent of like our hurricane warning, tornado warning system. Like without it, and years ago, they literally took like forever for somebody to get a warning to when by the time they got it, it was too late and everything's destroyed. And now to the modern time, it's gotten so good that they can find out 10 minutes before, and that's what I think Bran brings to the table. Like to say, knowledge is power, and it's
Mhm.
not so much his knowledge, but what he can do. You know what I mean? Pull out of these history and the memories, and then things that are start happening at the time.
Yes, absolutely. He's a very intelligent young boy. Without any help, as I said before, he's a very intelligent boy, and I thought that his chapter was beautifully written, especially through the eyes of this little boy. He is so intelligent, and I think he would definitely be a perfect three-eyed crow, three-eyed raven. I'm not sure what they call them in books. I can't remember.
A crow in the book.
Yeah, three-eyed. He'd be a wonderful three-eyed crow. He has the strong mental ability. He has a strong mind, especially for a boy his age.
And now he accepts what life is giving him. You know, like in the beginning, how he's always sullen and brooding over the fact that he lost the ability to use his legs, and like all you see Bran or hear Bran talking about is how he wanted to be a knight. Like you see how it bothers him watching the two Walters uh doing a little mock up, fight in the courtyard, and all he can do is sit in a basket on the back of Hodor, and you can tell it eats him up. But as he realizes what his power is and realizes the grand scheme of thing, and that he'll never be like the other, people that have their legs, he's very accepting of it now because he sees that there's a bit something bigger out there than him and his wants.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let me go ahead and start my overview. But first, I want to give a shout out to Russell Wolverton. He's in our chats. Hello, Russell. How you doing?
Hey,
Hey,
honey.
Russell.
And if anyone didn't know, that is Jennifer's husband. He has finally made it to our chat. So welcome, Russell.
Did
So
we
we
end up getting the link because I didn't get it to post it?
get your finger off of the microphone.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you go lower sometimes. So get your finger off the mic.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear
Definitely.
you.
Definitely.
Okay. Do we have the link for the stream? I'll go and I'll come back. I'll jump back on, but I'm gonna go and get the link and I'm gonna spread it on Facebook and in the groups real quick. Okay.
Okay, let me pull it up. Give me where is it?
I'll be right back. Right back.
Okay, hold on. Let me. I'll put it in the Hangouts. Okay.
Oh, okay, cool. Did you want me to put it in Facebook right now or no?
Oh,
Yeah,
he did
I
it for
just
you.
sent it a hang. Yeah, I just gonna say I sent it on Hangouts for it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you. I'll be back, you guys.
Okay.
Okay.
Lady Wolverton has let. No, Shelley is going to leave in a second, and she's coming right back, everyone. And I think Lady Wolverton is otherwise engaged, but she'll be back as well. And as soon as everyone gets back, we can go ahead with the overview. Yes, I would like to capitalize a little bit on what happened last week. In the Arya chapter, I think that they both are very, very intelligent people. Those two chapters, written through their eyes, were excellent, excellent. Especially from two children.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Of two children of a 7-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl. There were such intelligently written chapters. I mean, it's really, in my opinion, it could be frightening, to see, what goes on in a child's mind. Children, have a way of breaking things down to the basic level, even more than adults do. And they don't have much of a filter in them, and they, can get down to the nitty gritty of a situation a little bit faster than an adult can sometimes. And I just think that those two chapters were beautifully written, and it's good to see that. You don't really see a point of view chapter from a child in other books. In some books you do, and certainly in books in this genre, in the fantasy genre, but in other books, such as romance novels or literature books or other things of that nature. You don't see that too much. You don't see, the child's opinion. And I think it's a really good lesson for other writers to put a child's opinion into your book because they can, they can break it down into the basics, until they can break it down and break it down a little bit better. So, I mean, for all of the writers out there, if there's anyone listening out there, just put a child's perspective in the book, and
Yeah, I agree with you.
I think it could be a very insightful window, and a window that most people wouldn't really be concerned, with approaching. But I think it was very, very clever of George R. R. Martin to put the children's perspective into the books, and I just think it's just a sign of what a great writer he really is.
Yeah, I also really enjoy like how, like I was talking to you earlier, like for me to read a series of this size, like I really have to be into what the content of the book is. And the thing I think I love the most, and why I started to favor the books over show, like the show's great because you actually get to see it with your eyes what is being done in the book. But in the book, he is so descriptive about how like you literally can picture like the food and the
Mhm.
clothes because he like has so much description on everything down to the colors of the buttons on the shirt, like every little detail, and it makes it that much easier for people that have like less of an imagination to really,
Mhm.
you know what I mean, close your eyes and see that.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, they are very descriptive in Bran's chapter. I told you before that there was a lot in this chapter, and I went to like 4 pages just for the notes. And there, he's so wonderfully, descriptive, as you just said, and I can just, feel myself, entering that world every time I read a chapter. And just like you, I couldn't put the book down. I just couldn't. I read maybe 200 or 300 chapters in one sitting because I just loved it so much.
I know how you feel because like when I first started reading the book, and that's another reason why I'm doing another read through with it because of the fact that you learn something new every time we were talking about earlier, and it's like with the book, like you said, I couldn't put it down because of the way every chapter ends, especially when you get into like Storm of Swords and Feast and Dance, where he's literally giving you like a cliffhanger to the point where you don't know what's going to happen. Like for example, if you look at Jamie, like Jamie has a lot of chapters in Feast, but he only has one in Dance, and that's just for them to show the whole Lady Stoneheart thing with Brienne, and like you literally don't know what happened. You know what I mean, to Brienne when she talks about like she's gonna hang her, and then she says what she says. We got everybody pretty much has an idea what she said, but it hasn't been said yet. You know what I mean? So it's like you're really what makes this so popular is that he gets us on edge to where you want to find out. Every chapter to me almost is like God has some sort of cliffhanger that makes, like you said, not want to put that book down.
Oh yeah, I can't put it down. I mean, it's just amazing, and I can't believe that I gushed about it. When I first read it, and no one really understands. That's the thing. When I try to explain it to someone else, they don't get it
Mm-mm.
until you have to experience it for yourself. You have to read it for yourself. You have to get into the show for yourself. And it's just so hard to explain it to others. You just have to read it and feel it and know it for yourself and gather your own opinion. And you just have to come to your own conclusion about the book. You can't, it's just a book that you can't explain to anyone else. They have to experience it for themselves. And that is a sign of a great book.
You got good. I mean, that's a good point because I was talking to my wife, and she's like, I tried to get her so bad, like to get into it, get her. She reads a lot, And it's like I'm trying like just read the books, read the books. She'll watch episodes with me every once in a while if she's like out in the living room with me while I'm watching. And like it's hard for a person that hasn't delved into it as deep as like we have, because everybody's like it's a fantasy now. Like why do you hold so? And then like she doesn't understand like the whole theory. She's like, you guys talk about these things like it's real, and it's like I know I'm not naive. Like I know it's a fantasy book. Like I was never into the whole fantasy realm. I never read like Harry Potter. I seen literally like Lord of the Rings, just the movie. Like I've never read the books. It was that shows though to me how great of a series this is due to the fact that like it take the person that doesn't at all ever in their life even be interesting in that kind of genre, and then this ends up turning it all around. Like I feel bad sometimes because I was like, you're always on the computer talking to people when you're not working. It's like, yeah, look, I try to get you into it. You don't have to be as gung ho as me, but at least be on, to the point where we can have a discussion about it. And like, it's like I feel bad because I said like all the people that what I am, how I am about this story. There's people that I talk to are just as much invested in, or even 10 times more. So it's easy to be on here to talk to all these people because it seems like there's a lot of us in this community, but compared to YouTube as a whole and books and stories, throughout time, like we're really a small group. It's just that we're all connected because of this show and book.
Yes, I am gonna miss this. I'm gonna miss this when this is all over because there's so much connectivity. Everybody that is a part of Game of Thrones is hype about it. They're very opinionated. We are opinionated. I am opinionated. There's so much conversation, so much fodder for imagination. I mean, I never thought I would write, but I have written short stories and fan fictions about some of the characters in the show, and I never thought I would do anything like that. But so be it. Here I am, thinking of another topic for my videos, another Game of Thrones videos. I'm gonna be putting another one out tomorrow, and it's just so much. It's so much fodder and so much fuel for imagination, and it can open up your world if you let it.
Yeah, and
But
that's like what you said about like with this the whole what did I say? Yeah, but the fan fiction, it shows right there, like with all the things that are in these books, like the characters, the tassels, like the politics, like you literally, because we've been waiting so long for this next book, even with the show being out, some people, like you said, don't make up their own fan fiction, and I think that's just as entertaining as what's really going to happen because some people put a lot of thought into it. And I know you're probably like me numerous times when you've seen like a plot either get revealed or finish off by either a killing or something like that, or exchange of power. Like you could do so much with it on the fictional level because of how much it's involved and how all the characters are in some way like intertwined. It's like that 6 degrees of separation thing. You might have Dorne at one end and North at the other, but there's going to be people from both those kingdoms that are going to be intertwined with each other because how the politics are.
well, yes, it's an amazing. I think in some small way, he's created a world. I mean, it's like that old quote from William Blake: "See the world in a grain of sand." And I mean, he's managed to create a world, in a few pages, and it's just amazing what he has mastered. And I'm praying. I am on the edge of my seat, waiting for the Winds of Winter to come out, and I'm praying that he finishes his books, before he can't finish them anymore. And I'm not trying to insult him, making him seem like he would die or something like that, but
No,
I
it's a
I just want him.
realistic fear. Like and of course, like you want them to have health and good health, but like us being so invested in it, it's like on the other hand, you really want him to get it done so you can literally, like you said, it's gonna be a like sad and heartbreaking when there's no more, at least of the main series, Song of Ice and Fire. There's going to be no more of it. It's literally going to leave a hole in some people's hearts, because especially people that are very invested in it when it comes to YouTube channels or Reddit, Twitter, whatever. Like it's going to be sad that you're going to know that there's not another story after that. So it's like I think it's really going to suck, like you said.
Yeah, I'm gonna miss it. I'm gonna miss it all when it's over, and even more than I prayed for George R. R. Martin. I'm kind of send up a prayer for myself, because I don't want to die before it comes out.
Right, yeah. Some people don't
I
think
want to
about
see
that
that.
part of it. They always worried about him dying. I mean, anybody can die in an hour from now. Like life isn't promised. You gotta go through life thinking hopefully I'm gonna get to read that, but you never know. The next day something could happen. And I don't want to sound morbid, but everybody always bases it on him dying or his bad health. Like, what if you die or your bad health keeps you from reading? You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I could, and this is like my fantasy, if I could, I would travel maybe 15 years into the future, get those last two books and anything else he's written, and just come on back. I mean,
Right.
if there was a chance, if there was a way that I could move through time somehow, I would do that. Forget about fixing anything in the past for me. I just want to go to the future and grab those books.
Right. Now, do you buy into the whole, like, have you heard the whole theory where they think it's taken so long from to finish it because he's going to release Winds and A Dream of Spring at the same time?
No, I don't think he's. Let me say this. If okay, look, I think that he has got that book, both of those books, finished already, and he's just waiting on the right time to put them out. I mean, I just think, on some level, I think he's got those two books in his closet somewhere, and he's just waiting for the show to end, and then bust them both out, within years of each other. Winter would come out maybe a few months, maybe a few months to a year after the show goes off the air, and then maybe 3 or 4 years later he'll bring out The
Yeah.
Dream.
And I think he might even have a similar feeling to us, how when the story's going to be over and how it's going to be after. Like, I think in a way, he doesn't really want to finish, or at least be in a rush to finish it, because that's his baby. And to put an end to it means you're not going to be right no more for that one. And I think it's probably got to be right. He's had decent books before, but this series is what made him a household name.
Oh
And
yeah.
to have that just disappear, overnight, because the story's finished, I think he really does have a little bit of not so much depression, but to the fact that this is going to get done one day, regardless if either it's from him, something happening health wise, and he's deceased, or we just it's crazy. Like it's crazy how invested, like, you can even get into something that is not real. Like myself, like I've always tried to like go on like being realistic about things, and it's like I could be pessimistic at times, but it's like I said, my wife doesn't get it. She's just like, how can you be that invested in something that's not real? And then like the way I talk about it, she's like, you talk about it like we live in this world.
I mean, it is a world. It is a world, but we all know it's not real, but it
And then
is a
like the way I
world.
talk about it, she's like, you talk about it like we live in this world. I mean, it is a world. It is a
Yeah,
world.
it is a
We
world,
all
and
know
it's big, and it's just so involved.
You guys, we
Yeah,
should probably get on to the overview.
yeah. Okay, yeah, I was trying to wait for Shelley, but she hasn't popped in yet.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
But
I didn't know.
no, it's okay. Yeah, I know we were trying to wait for you and Shelley, but
Oh, I've been back a while.
oh,
Oh, I
okay.
didn't know. I thought
Oh,
you.
I didn't
I'm
know.
sorry. I've
She
typed
said
it in the
something.
chat. Well, I was just listening.
Okay. Yeah, Cindy said that she was stopping by, and that she had to
Hey,
go ahead and
Cindy.
leave.
I just see that now. Hey, Cindy. Okie doke.
Let's just go ahead and start then. I hate to start without Shelley, but we're gonna have to keep this moving.
Right.
Bran is a 7-year-old boy, and he is the middle son of Ned and Catelyn Stark. His chapter is in Winterfell. Yeah, his chapter is in Winterfell, and it is the last day of the royal party. The royal party, is about to leave Winterfell and go on back to King's Landing,
And
and
he's
part
going
of the
too.
family is going as well.
He's going as well.
Yes, he's going as well, and they before they leave, they wanted to go on one last hunt, and Benjen, Jory, Theon, Roderick, Tyrion, Robb, Ned, the king, and a few of his king's guards are all going out for a hunt, and it's their last day at Winterfell. I want to make a note that Jon was left out of this. He was left out of being invited onto the hunt because he is a bastard, and it is clearly, plain that he is angry about that. Brand said that Jon has been angry for a little while now. He doesn't understand why, but apparently it is because he is a bastard, and he, obviously was put into the corner out of sight, and he is not even allowed to go, on the hunt with the royal party. He's completely and totally left out. Now, Bran is very, very excited about everything. He's excited about King's Landing. He's excited about Ned being the hand of the king. He's excited to see the Red Keep. Bran, wants to be a knight, and he goes a little bit into some of the legendary knights, the knights such as Ryan Redwyn, Serwyn of the Mirror Shield, uh, Gerald Hightower, and Barristan the Bold. He goes into a lot of those wonderful, amazing knights, and he, Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight, Sir Eric and Sir Eric, who fought, you know, against each other in the Dance of the Dragons, Sir Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning. These amazing, wonderful knights, and he wants to be one himself. Now, Bran says that two of the King Guard's knights came to Winterfell, but it was actually three of them. The two knights that came to Winterfell were Sir Burrus Blunt and Meryn Trant, along with Jaime Lannister. And he looks at Burrus Blunt and Meryn Trant, and he doesn't see them as these legendary knights that he thinks of. He can really tell that, some of them are old and balding and jowly and droopy eyes. And when he looks at a knight, he doesn't see those two as knights. He sees Jaime Lannister as the knight from the stories. And he also comments on Sir Barristan Selmy, Barristan the Bold. And Barristan the Bold is the Lord of the King's Guard now. He's considered the greatest living knight, and he's very excited to meet him. He's very excited to meet Sir Barristan the Bold, and he wants to be a knight himself. He wants to be known as a great knight for himself.
Yeah, that speaks volumes. What you just said, like how he wants to be a knight, because the North really doesn't do the whole knight thing. Like literally, we only hear of two Northmen that are actually even have knighthood, and the two I know, Jorah Mormont got his after the what's it called, the Greyjoy rebelled, and like he literally like knighted him right there on the battlefield. But other than that, they usually don't seek out to become a knight because it's like a fate to the seven thing. So it shows though with Bran and the Starks as a whole how much influence the Tullys and the faith of the seven religion itself, how it influences the kids over the Northmen, old gods culture where they live like they live in the heart of the North, but their ways of doing things are more faith of the seven and that southern way of doing things.
Yes, I mean there aren't very many known knights from the north, and he certainly wants to stand out and be one for himself. He looks to those knights,
Yeah,
with adoration
exactly.
in his eyes.
He not only wants to be a knight, but he wants to be a not. He wants to be. That's not just his goal to be a knight. He wants to be a great knight. He
Yes,
wants to be. He has ambition to be somebody who is sung about or what have you, kind of like John in that respect. Like
mhm.
John has romanticized the wall. Bran has romanticized being a knight, and like y'all said, especially growing up with a mother who's in the faith of the seven, the Starks and everybody, they recognize the honor. However, I think the reason the Northmen do not recognize it is because you can be a knight and maybe not really deserve the honor, and the Northmen know this, because they always say, that the North fights like 10 Southerners. And I think that's what they mean by that, probably, is that they've seen a lot of people who were knights who, maybe got knighted because of their service or whatever, and maybe not necessarily because of their fighting ability per se.
Yes, I mean, knighthood now is not the same as it once was back then. You can really tell by these two knights, Burris Blunt and Marin Trance. They're nothing like the legends that went before them. They are no Ryan with Ryan and all and Sir Wyndham the Shield and all those people. And Bran can see that already. He can
Yeah,
see
And
that
I could
things.
take out John, okay?
Hmm.
and that's the
Yeah.
thing too. Like he kind of reminds me of Sansa in that way because they both are naive and had these you know things that they think like being a knight is, like you said, it's not the same anymore. A lot of these knights are more crooked than the people living in flea bottom committing crimes. They just and
Exactly.
it's just like as a metaphor because their armor as a knight, it's also their armor from the punishment others get for the same things that they do.
And, just like somebody like Hawkeye, he associates knights as just being anybody who has nice armor on, which also goes to show, just the
No, it's
different.
not. No, it's not just about the armor. It's the
No,
person
it's
inside the armor.
exactly, but that just goes to show you, like his mom sold pie, so he's seen probably, well, he probably doesn't see them, that frequently, but he's seen them enough to where he feels like he knows what a knight is. Do you
Mm,
understand what I'm saying? So I
yeah.
think that shows just how denigrated the honor has become,
Yes, I mean,
honestly.
yes, the honor is not as, prevalent in the South as it is in the North.
And then we see that right away with the King's Guard. I mean, arguably, the only two people who could have made it on the King's Guard back in the day would have been Barristan and Jamie.
Hmm.
Yeah, and another example of
They're
that
like the
is the
B team.
wall.
They're like the C team King's
Yeah.
Guard with a
And
couple really good players.
like they make it, I think it's in a John chapter where like even at the wall there's only a handful of guys
Right.
there that are actual knights. And if you like there's this one hall they have, and I think it's after like when the wildlings, and I don't know if he's Lord Commander yet or it's right before it, there's this hall. I guess it's like I think it's an alternate like hall because of the fire they're using it or something. And in the hall they would have the shields of each knight that served there, I guess, after they died. And he I guess, talks about, if I'm not mistaken, like how long it's been since a shield has been put up there. Because now it's just like a glorified penal colony. It's like back then they actually would, say, go up and enlist on their own without having to be punished for a crime.
And the last person we see actually do that is John, who, well, Sam joins on his own, but he really had no options. But that's, you can see, like, the last person to join on their own, I believe, is John, isn't it? And then before that, Waymar Royce. But I don't think was Waymar, and that's okay. There's an example right there. I think Waymar was a knight, but had he really earned his spurs in battle or by any great deeds? No, money bought him that. Just like Cersei was bestowing that King's Guard as a high honor instead of looking out on having the best people, which came through also when she kicked, just by reputation alone, she should have never got rid of Barristan Selmy.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a terrible thing to
That
do
was
to
one of her.
him.
That's one of Cersei's worst moves ever.
Oh yeah, yeah. They needed Barristan Selmy because those other guards that they had, weren't about a damn thing. Um, I want to go on with the overview and say
Okay.
that he is looking very much forward to going to King's Landing, but he has to say goodbye. He's got to say goodbye to, his home that he's lived in all his life, and he's afraid, and he was almost at the point of tears.
Yeah, that
And
stuck with me.
yeah, he wants to go on and move forward with his life, but he doesn't. The good times, the good time of his life was right there in Winterfell, and he doesn't know what's coming in King's Landing. We also go into the names of the dire wolves. The dire wolves, all have names except for Bran's dire wolves. He hasn't, it's been 2 weeks since he had his dire wolf, and he hasn't named it yet. He can't think of a name to name his dire wolf, though. But Ghost is John's dire wolf. Grey Wind is Rob's dire wolf because he can move so fast. Lady is Sansa's dire wolf, and Nymeria is Arya's dire wolf. And he still hasn't named his dire wolf yet. He doesn't know what to name him. So instead of thinking about all of what is to come, he decides to go climbing. He starts off in the Godswood, and I want to say that he's very much afraid of the heart tree. He's afraid of the leaves. He's afraid of the face in the heart tree. But as we all know, Bran is going to become very familiar with that tree later on, and it was a good foreshadowing. So he decides to go climbing. He is a barefoot climber. He climbs barefooted. So that he's very, very good at it. And as he's climbed, he's found secret passages. He can see the view from above, and it makes him feel like the lord of the manor. I mean, the lord of the castle. He feels a great sense of power when he climbs, and he's seen things that other people can't see. He notices things about people that other people don't notice, and he has a different view. Catelyn, his mother, is very much afraid of him climbing, afraid that he may kill himself and he may fall and kill himself. And Bran, tried to promise, her that he wouldn't do it, but he broke his promise and ended up climbing 2 weeks later. Um, Ned, doesn't want him climbing either, but he managed to accept it in the end. So, but Catelyn never could. Catelyn, tried to
That's a
scare him.
that's a cute little story though. So Ned sends him to the Godswood to pray
Hmm.
on it, I guess. Anybody ever been sent to their room and told to pray on it?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically that's what happens to him. And when they come to get him in the morning, Houston fell asleep in one of the sentinel trees.
Yes, absolutely. He just, it's just something that he has to do. And
Almost in
his
his
father,
nature.
yeah, it's something that, yeah, it's in his nature. And his father called him a squirrel. And that's a good foreshadowing for another character named Squirrel. You're going to see her in the Dance of Dragons, the Dance with Dragons, a character named Squirrel who is also a good climber. Catelyn, tried to scare him, into not climbing anymore, telling him terrible stories about Bran falling and the crows pecking his eyes out. And so,
The clay doll analogy, Maester
yeah.
Aemon. I know him and Caitlin cooked that up. I
Oh,
could just
yeah.
see them.
Yeah, so to get around that, he just made friends with the crows and made friends with all of the birds. He's friends with all the birds, the crows, the sparrows, the owl. And that's a good, foreshadowing for him because he's gonna come in contact with the three-eyed crow later on. You know, the the conspiracy about the little clay doll. So that, they tried to scare him by throwing a clay doll out of a window, and he just thought that was funny. And he answered that with a little boy's invincibility. When you're a child, you think you're
Yes.
invincible and
Even
infallible.
older
And
than
he
that.
says, "Oh, I never fall." He's a boy, and he thinks that nothing bad will ever happen, and that just comes with being a child. And he hasn't quite grown up just yet.
But that speaks to the security they had in their home, that
Hmm.
they all do leave home with that attitude, though.
Yeah.
Do
Hmm.
you guys know what I mean? Like, when you get around a child who is very secure in their self and they don't think anything will ever happen, it's because they come from a very secure, loving home life. And you get around a child who is scared of everything, scared of their own shadow. Usually, not always. You have
Hmm.
children who were very painfully shy or whatever, but usually it means, everything is not so great all the time, and they're already watching out for themselves, so to speak.
Yeah, his guard is completely down. He's home. He's in Winterfell, and his guard is down, and he thinks that nothing bad will happen to him in his home. He hasn't quite learned just yet. And then there's another instance where the guards would try to chase him, and he just thought it was funny. He could climb away from the guards, and it was a game to him, and he just thought it was completely and totally funny. Now,
Yeah.
his favorite place to climb to is the broken tower, and we hear a little bit about that broken tower. Apparently, 100 years ago, before Ned was born, it was struck by lightning. A lightning bolt struck the tower, and the tower collapsed on the third floor. And no one has ever, thought to rebuild it. I mean, I think that they didn't rebuild the tower because they were afraid of that tower. That's not mentioned in the books, but that's just my opinion. I think that people, seeing as they were in the superstitious north, excuse me, let me get a drink of water.
Okay.
Yeah, um, they I think because the North is such a superstitious place and the people are so superstitious, and this is just my opinion, this was not in the books. I think that they never really wanted to touch the tower again because a lightning bolt struck it. It seems like something that has never really happened in our story, a lightning bolt striking a tower. That's never really happened in the story at all, in all five books, and all of the other companion books as well, with the exception of Storm's End. But lightning striking a tower, I think that people were afraid to go back into that tower, and it was never ever rebuilt. So they may see that place as maybe as an unlucky place or something like that.
Right. No, I
Hmm.
get you.
Yeah. So he climbed. He climbed up, the trees, walked across the place, the rooftops, and he heard voices from his tower. He heard two voices, a man and a woman's voice, and it frightened him. He's shocked that someone was actually in his tower. He sees that it's his place, and he hears voices from the window of the broken tower. And this is the first time we see Cersei and Jaime Lannister talking to each other freely. Now you notice that they're in a private place. They're in a private place and they're speaking more freely than they would, be if they were out in the open. Now, this is the conversation. I've tried to write it up as best I could. Um, Cersei, does not want for Ned to be hand of the king. She wanted Jaime to be hand of the king, but Jaime is completely uninterested in doing that. She's acting mainly out of fear. She's afraid throughout this entire section. Her motivation, her driving force is fear, and a fearful person can make terrible mistakes. Now, Stannis and Renly are both mentioned, and Robert apparently does not care for either one of them. And Robert sees Ned as his brother, the brother that he wanted, the brother he chose. And Cersei is very threatened by that relationship. I mean, you can, I think there's even a little bit of jealousy there because she knows that her husband doesn't love her and vice versa.
Also resentment,
Yeah,
because
she
that
was.
was Liana's sister. And even though she doesn't know the truth of that whole situation that broke down, because she would probably eat it up if she knew the fact that Leanna actually ran off on him,
Yeah.
and throw it in his face every chance she could get. But
Hmm.
that's not the facts, as we much later come to find out. But um, resentment, if you will, because of association. I mean,
Hmm.
she feels like she never had a chance in that marriage because Liana's shadow, or ghost, if you will, was
Hmm.
always in bed with them.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
she was.
Yeah, she
But
was. I mean, it's
not
mentioned.
knowing the truth hurt a lot of people. And not only did it hurt John and, many, and, that side of it hurt Cersei's life as well. If
I mean, yeah,
if the truth had
absolutely.
been known, her life would have gone much differently as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, she was been trapped in a loveless marriage for 19 years, and marriage changes a woman. I mean, and a good marriage can make a woman very happy. Happy life, happy wife. But if there is no love in a marriage, then it can make a woman very surly and very morose. And that is what's happened to Cersei. She's terrified, and she's making these moves and saying things mainly out of fear. She was certain that Ned would refuse Roberts, but apparently she didn't get her wish. Now, it was noted that Ned did not want to be the hand of the king. He did not want to leave his family. He didn't want to do anything, but apparently that is what's happened. Ned, obeyed his king. He was faithful, and he has decided to go ahead and go to King's Landing and be the hand of the king. Now, this is also the first time that Littlefinger, my sweet Peter,
Oh God.
has been mentioned. He's been mentioned as ambitious, and Jamie thinks that it is better that Ned is the hand of the king over Littlefinger because he sees him as an ambitious person and sees him as an enemy. And Jamie says that it's better that Ned is an
The
is the
hand
hand of the
than
king.
Littlefinger.
Yeah,
Give
the
me
Littlefinger.
give me an honorable man over an ambitious one any day,
Yeah,
I
and
think is the quote.
yeah, an honorable enemy. He sees these people as
Yes.
enemies. He sees Ned as the enemy.
Both of them as enemies, but one of them is reaching and one of them is truly trying to be good. And he knows that. And people always go on about how dumb Jamie and Cersei are. They are, but they're not, because like Sansa said, I'm going to go get on some TV for a minute. Like Sansa said in the last episode, I'm a slow learner. It's true, but I learn. Cersei and Jamie had already learned that lesson.
Oh yeah,
However long
absolutely.
it took them. We know from the text she had at least 19 years to learn. However long it took her, and I don't believe he was down in King's Landing for 19 years because Lysa Arryn got him that position. So it would
Yeah.
have to have been at the start or after the war. But they've had a while to fill. They've had 20 years, 2 decades basically to fill out Littlefinger. Okay, so Sansa might be a slow learner, and maybe they are as well. But they do learn at least. Littlefinger was probably one of the most dangerous people at the Capitol, and he was, and they knew that. So
Hmm.
for as dumb as they are, they're not blind.
No, no, no. They act out. They're very intelligent people, but they make bad
Yeah,
decisions.
they have impulse control big time,
Oh yeah.
especially Jamie, especially in these early chapters.
Also, Cersei says that we will have to watch him. So, Ned is going to be spied upon while he's in King's Landing. So, there will be spies in King's Landing, just, from inferring that out of that one sentence. Now, Cersei is afraid that Eddard is going up against her family, her and her family. She's afraid of Lysa Arryn, Catelyn's sister. So, as you said before, he's guilty by association. And she's afraid of Liza's accusations. She said that she was surprised that Lysa Arryn wasn't there, with her accusations. And I'm assuming that they're talking about Jon Arryn's death. We have to assume that in the beginning because of the letter that Catelyn received. Cersei also thought that with her son, as at Casterly Rock, he could be a good hostage, and it would force Liza to remain silent. But now that they are both at the Erie, Liza may start running her mouth about things that Cersei doesn't want,
And she
to get
does.
out.
And she
To get out.
does.
Yeah, and she does. Absolutely. It really shows how intelligent Cersei is here, but she's also very fearful as well. Now, Jamie thinks that she has no proof of it, but Cersei is afraid that Robert, just saying it to Robert, will cause an uproar.
And I believe it would have.
Yeah, it would have.
Because also, like in this chapter, we see where she says, "How long will it take before he'll put me aside for the next Lyanna?"
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
believe that was a real fear she started to have. Now, I think it was a bit unfounded with the succession secure. I don't necessarily think that he would have done that, but who knows? If somebody like Marjorie Tyrell came along and basically charmed him, he may have done it.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen it before. Henry VIII did it.
Just casting wives aside and
Yeah,
pretending like
cutting
you're not
heads
married
off,
to. Yeah.
making them sisters.
Yeah, that was
Wow.
ridiculous. That was ridiculous.
Okay, you guys, listen, I've got to go, but I
Okay.
just wanted to say goodbye to everybody and how much I enjoyed this. But what I really took away from this chapter also is, um, and I finally began to see this, like the reason Bran didn't immediately just take Arya's side and turn on Sansa as well is because think about it. Bran always viewed Arya as a rival, kind of. So I think him and Sansa probably had more of a brother sisterly relationship. So he would still be of a mind to try to be protecting of her.
Well,
Like, and I'm getting back a little bit TV now, but I really got out of this chapter just how much of a rival Bran did view Arya as, because he even mentioned, he's like, well, they're just girls or whatever. Well, Sansa plays the role that she was born to play, but Arya does, like when she picks up the bow and arrow and shoots better than him, like she does a bunch of stuff better than him, and I think that has stifled their relationship as much as probably, just like Sansa and Arya's relationship was basically stifled out of jealousy and resentment.
yes, yes, and there was a little bit of it with Rob as well.
And I pick up on that a little bit more in this chapter because of Bran constantly kind of being skipped over so that the oldest son, and also I think if it had been a different wife who was more accepting of John, because Robert wouldn't have cared if a bastard went along. Heck, if he could get it by his wife, I think he would have had all his bastards living right around him.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
he wasn't worried about anything like that.
Right, but Cersei would
No.
not have had it, and neither would Catelyn have had that. And so that's, if it had been a different person, a different time, a different place, they would have been okay. But Caitlyn nor Cersei was going to stand, especially for a bastard, looking better than their own children, I think is what it comes down to.
Absolutely, she had that Southern ambition.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Okay, guys, so I've got to go.
Okay, I understand.
Bye, Jen.
Thank y'all so
Bye, Jen.
much. I'll
Bye,
talk to you
Jen.
later. Okay, bye,
Okay, then.
Tony, Shelley, Misha, everybody in the chat are listening later. Thanks a lot. Okay, everybody have a great weekend. I will be at the Saints game Sunday. Go Saints.
Yeah. Happy anniversary.
All right, thank you. Yes, it's me and Russell.
Okay, we must have lost her. Okay, yeah, it's her and her husband's anniversary. They've been together for 9 years, so show some love for Jennifer Russell Wolverton. Now, back with the story. So she says that the king does not love her. So she, as I said before, she's in a loveless marriage, and they have no love for each other. And it's clear that as you're listening to this and reading this, that she would happily see Robert die so that Joff can take the throne. Her son Joffrey could take the throne. She says, and she thinks that it'll be safer for them with Joffrey on the throne. She knows that Robert and Ned would be loyal to each other, but she's afraid that Ned wouldn't be loyal to her son Joffrey. And she is afraid that Robert, will leave her and set her aside and cast her children aside. She's governed by fear throughout this entire, altercation. Now, Bran has been listening to all of this, and he, is trying to make sense of it. He can't make sense of it all. He knows that they're talking about his father, but, he's a boy, and he doesn't know the situation, and he's trying his best to try to hold on, to his position
Innocence.
on the rocks. Yeah, and his innocence and his position on the rocks. Now, he's outside, and he has climbed up to that window. So he's trying to listen and hold on to the rocks and try to make sense of everything. It's a very confusing time. It was one place in the chapter that was very confusing to him.
Mhm.
And I think that the author really captured the confusion in him, very well. Now, Bran has made it, outside of the window, and he looks in. And what he sees, really, really frightens him. He's hearing noises. He's hearing sexual noises. He's seeing a man and a woman, locked up in, passion with each other. They're having sex with each other. They're touching. They're roping. They're naked.
Mhm.
They have no clothes on. And he's trying to figure all of this out. Now, he's 7 years old. So he's probably never seen two people be together. And I mean, this is really, really big. This is a huge shock for him. Not only is he seeing two people having sex with each other for the first time, he's seeing a brother and a sister having sex with each other. So, that has to, make a bad impression on him. You
Oh
know,
yeah, definitely.
yes, he says that they looked as much alike as a reflection in a mirror. Now, I think that's a very, very good sentence. I think that it really explains the attraction between Cersei and Jaime. When they look at each other, they see themselves. That I mean, and it really shows that later on in Feast for Crows, when they have the breakup, she looks at him now, in Feast for Crows, and she doesn't see herself anymore. She keeps saying that he's changed, that I don't know you anymore. But I think that is the main attraction for the two of them. Plus, she's in a loveless marriage and she's looking for love. She says it in Dance that a woman needs to be loved, and she's the most hated woman probably in Westeros.
Oh,
And I think,
definitely.
yeah, so I mean, I think that she really, is looking for love. She's looking for love, and she's looking for love in the wrong place. Um, Now, Bran, sees the two of them together, and then once again, Cersei's afraid. She's saying, he saw us. And Jaime is very flippant throughout this entire section. Throughout that entire section, he's bored with the conversation. He just wants to get back in bed, and he's very flippant and uncaring and indifferent toward all of this. She sees this as a serious situation, but he sees it as nothing but a bore to him. So Jaime is very flippant, and Bran, has been caught. She looks right at Cersei. I mean, he looks right at Cersei, and she's trying to put her clothes on. And she's saying he saw us, and he's about to fall right out of that window. But it was Jaime himself who caught him by the hand. He was about to fall right then, but he
See,
is caught. Yeah, go
my
ahead.
own my own self, I do wonder at that moment if Bran would have turned around and he would have not allowed Jaime to grab his hand. If Bran would have fell on his own, then it might have. I think it would have been a little bit better for him. Still having,
He fell
he
on
might
his
have.
own.
Yeah, I mean, he would have broke maybe like a bone or two, but at least he would be able to be conscious when he fell like that, and he would have been able to kind of just. He would have had less. What is it? Less, I guess, damage is an easy word to say because with Bran and how skilled
Well,
he
I mean,
is. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's a third floor. I mean, they said that this was like a third story tower. It went up
yeah.
like 3 or 4 stories. So, I mean,
Um,
it's going to be a long fall.
Yeah,
This is not, this is not some short little fall, like 20 feet or something like that. This is like maybe 30 or maybe 40 feet in the
true.
air. So, I mean, this is not, he was not going, once he hit that ground, his back was broken. I mean, he's lucky to be alive. Now, as I said before, and I'm not trying to disagree with you, Shelley, but I mean, I don't think it would have been good. I have to disagree with you because I don't think it would have been good either way.
Really, because I was thinking like maybe if he would have turned around and he would have not grabbed Jamie's hand, I was maybe thinking like there might have been a chance that, okay, well, yeah, he's going to end up breaking bones, but it wouldn't have been as bad as when he just fell completely backwards and just broke everything from the waist down kind of thing, like at least he would have still been able to rehabilitate something, and he still might have been able to down the road still ride a horse or something. I don't know. I mean, I seeing as how far and how high it is, he was going to end up having some kind of damage. I just think that the way that he fell backwards caused the more damage than if he would have just dropped his own self.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think I gotta disagree with you. I mean, I don't think it would have ended good either way. I mean, that's just my opinion. We're gonna have to differ on that one. But I just don't think that it would have been a good outcome for him. You know,
True.
now Jamie is holding on to Bran, and he asks him, how old are you? And he says that he's 7 years old, and he says, oh, the things I do for love. And it kind of makes me think that maybe he doesn't really love Cersei as much as he thinks he does, because he was so flippant about it.
Right.
He was completely and totally flippant about it. He, you know, I think he cares more for himself than he does for her on some level. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think the sentence speaks for itself. They looked as much alike as a reflection in the mirror. I mean, I think he just loves her because he looks at her and sees himself, the reflection of himself. And Jamie, pushes Bran out of the window. Now, this is from Bran's point of view, and they were really descriptive about this. What did they say at the end? I have it here on my computer. He said that there was nothing to hold on to, and I mean that's really really, if you think about that, it's really frightening, because when we're standing up, we have the floor to support us, and we have something to hold on to. If we're in our house, we can grab on, to the table or the chair or something like that if we trip and fall. But there was nothing for him to hold on to. Screaming, Bran went backwards out of the window into empty air. There was nothing to grab onto. The courtyard rushed up to meet him. I mean, those few sentences, really say a lot. And it's really
Mm-hmm.
frightening when you think about it. Having nothing to hold on to, having nothing to steady yourself, having nothing to catch you when you fall.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just think about those few sentences, that means so much. I mean, I think people, as a human race, want someone or something to hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about that, Bran, just didn't have that anymore. In that moment, in that horrible moment, he was alone and falling, and completely his life was about to be over, and having no one or nothing to hold on to, it must have been so frightening for him.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere off in the distance, a wolf was howling. Crows circled the broken tower, waiting for corn. And that's the end of the chapter. And it's just a frightening, very eye-opening chapter. It's the end of the good time for the Starks. It's the end.
Definitely.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
just the
that
end.
kind of signaled the beginning of the end for them.
Now, I've talked a lot. Let me let y'all two have it for a while. I need some water.
Okay. Well, I guess. Well, Tony, did you want to go first or no?
You can go.
Okay. Because one thing that I had picked up from the chapter was when Misha had said it a little bit was when Bran was kind of going over the idea of being kind of left alone at the house, and he was left there with like his sisters and the girls and left with John, but John pretty much just kind of up and bailed on everyone, and he was sitting down and reflecting about like John and his situation and him going up to the wall. And I don't know. I mean, when I'm sitting down and when I'm reading through it and I'm seeing like how Bran is considering everyone and how he's going through everything and how he's looking like, oh, okay, well, you know, John is a bastard and he's going to be going up with Uncle Benjen over to the wall, but he's looking and he's thinking about himself and his prospects of being a knight and what that means and like how much it would how like what it would mean to be in the King's Guard, and he's kind of just like planning out his future and just the way that he was going about it. I don't know if he was trying to compare himself to John or not, but from the way that I had read it, it kind of looked like maybe that was what he was doing. I don't really see too much as far as like a relationship between Bran and John at that moment. So it does, like what Misha said, it kind of looks like he's more towards Sansa than anything, because since Arya and John are kind of in the same cloth, then for Bran and Sansa, they would look a little more down on John than anyone else, you know. And that was something that I had paid attention to in a chapter. I'm trying to think of if there was when Bran was climbing and he had started hearing Cersei and Jaime and talking about his father, and curiosity kind of killed the cat because he went further than what he should have as far as climbing was concerned. And it's because of him trying to hear more and to listen onto more, that he kind of lost sense of what it was that he was doing. Maybe he even lost sense of where he was just because he wanted to hear more. And I just kind of wonder why he didn't stay where he was and just listen in on the conversation, and then once it got to a certain point just to run off instead of trying to move forward and to hear more and everything along those lines, you know. That was something that I had kind of wondered while I was reading the chapter as well. I
Yeah,
I don't.
he knew that he should not have been there. He
Yep.
knew that he shouldn't have been climbing. He knew, but you know, he had no choice but to go forward. You know,
Yeah, and
it's kind of being on
yeah,
automatic pilot.
unfortunately it was, and him being of a young age, um, he didn't take that into consideration about everything that was going on at that moment. And that's something that when you're reading it, you have to kind of realize that he is only 7 years old and he doesn't really understand what's going on and the actual implications of what he had heard. And it's kind of unfortunate that he didn't have the knowledge or the understanding to kind of take the information that he had and to go right away instead of trying to get more and to find out who's saying what and doing what where. Because had he turned around and had he climbed down that moment when he thought about it, then not only would he still would have stayed intact and not had that accident, but then again that could have turned around and made that whole situation even worse for Cersei. And it's just kind of that hindsight when you're going back and when you're reading through it. And that's kind of where I was when reading the chapter was that I seen how he wanted to be a knight. I seen how he had what he thought about certain siblings and how he had a certain idea of certain siblings, and then that whole situation there. And I'm trying to find a way to like word what it is that I'm thinking of, but it's yeah. It was kind of those key points there. But one thing that I do remember is when he started getting upset about being left behind, and he didn't want Hodor, and he didn't want any of the other stable boys to see him crying. So he ended up running away because he considers himself to be like a future knight, and for being a future knight, you can't turn around, you can't show that you're weak or that you have any kind of fear, which is why he ended up leaving. And it makes me wonder if maybe in that regard, maybe that might have also been playing in his mind, or might have thrown him off a little bit too before he even started climbing. So when he ended up on that situation between Jaime and Cersei, he wasn't completely on. It's hard trying to say that maybe it was his emotions, or maybe it was because he was more of a kid, and where to pinpoint what happened and how. But yeah, that's the only thing that I'm trying to grasp my head around is if Bran, I don't know how to explain where his mentality was in that situation, you know?
Yeah, see, like that's the thing too, like with the whole him walking up on what he's seen. Like I'm really firm believer that Bloodraven was guiding him that way for that to happen. Because I think, you know, like in the beginning before he when he's like gets good at warging Summer, it's like only happening when he's asleep, and they're like really like vague where he like might have a certain taste in his mouth like blood. But then I think that coma itself like got him more in tune with his abilities, because at the time they're only really happening when he sleeps, and in a coma you're sleeping for pretty much for a long time. So it was almost like it was his first part of his training was to get more, you know, in with his ability.
Yeah. And that makes sense. And that also brought up something is that it shows in the book that at the time of his accident, he still didn't know what to call his direwolf. And that was something that was also on his mind too, because he was sitting there and he was noticing how all his other siblings had named all of their direwolves, and they named them something cool, and it was a reflection of them. And then he's still trying to figure out what he's going to name his direwolf, which is kind of, in a sense, like trying to find out his own identity. I mean, with like in comparison, he looked at Sansa and how she had Lady, and how Rob had Grey Wind, and I don't know if he even mentioned Arya's. I don't even think he did, but he did mention John's direwolf, because there was like a tint of jealousy with the way that he had said, "Oh, well, you know, I should have been able to come up with a cool name like Ghost for my direwolf." And yeah, I to me it kind of sounded like he was still having like a little bit of a trying to figure himself out, and in naming his direwolf, that would have also given him his name too. But he never had the opportunity before his accident to really figure out who he was or what he really wanted to be, except for the fact that he wanted to be a great knight and to join the King's Guard, and he understood the sacrifice that it would take. But that was just always what he was thinking that his mind or his heart was set on. But if that was the case, then I think he would have already been able to name his Shaggy, or not his Shaggy, he would have been able to name his direwolf if he already had a sense of who he was and what he wanted to do. For instance, with John's direwolf Ghost, John his own self feels like a ghost, and his direwolf is white like a ghost. So it made a statement, if you will, by naming his direwolf Ghost, because it's a reflection of him. And before the accident, Bran really didn't have anything to identify himself with. And he had all these notions, but from my perspective, it makes me wonder if he really wanted to join the Knights, the King's Guard, and if he really wanted to join and be a knight, or if it was just something that he just glamorized, but it wasn't anything solid, or he didn't consider himself really doing that in the future. And that's just one of the things that's interesting about the direwolves, and him not being able to even name his direwolf beforehand. You know, it took him going into a coma and pretty much going and warging into his direwolf to figure out what to name him once he woke up. But it took so long for him to figure that out. So in a sense, maybe that was Bloodraven trying to guide him into something bigger, or to guide him towards an actual identity for himself, you know? And
I agree.
okay,
Yeah, I agree with you absolutely. I
yeah.
mean, he hasn't quite found himself yet, and he certainly, finds himself, later on in the chapters. But apparently, he had to be injured. He had to be comatose in order
Hmm.
to find himself and his true identity. I fully agree with you.
Yeah, because that was one thing that did stick out, is that it was only a small part in the chapter, but it spoke a lot of volumes about himself, and how he identified and how he looked at his other siblings, and the reflection of his siblings in their direwolves. And I think that must have been something that he was aware of as well, because that was something on his mind, was that, well, everyone else has an identity, and everyone else has a certain role that they play, or a certain way that they act or think, and I'm here, and he even sat down and said Shaggy Dog, like, and he was like, oh well, that's a stupid name, but even his younger brother had identified and been able to say, okay, well, hey, the my direwolf is a big shaggy dog, and that's what I'm going to identify with that. And Bran just wasn't able to do that for himself. He wasn't able to find a name that would reflect him and his direwolf in the way that everyone else was able to. So I don't know if I should keep going, or if there's, did anybody want to jump in or to say anything, or?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I had my microphone off.
Oh no,
Um,
you're fine.
yeah, it is very good that he named his direwolf Summer. And some people, believe it has something to do with the season of summer.
Hmm.
But I think, you know, it comes from that old saying, my sweet summer child.
Right.
And that's what I
Yeah.
think, I think it's him, leaving that sweet summer child behind. And, that he once was, and embracing the winter, embracing the bad time, the cruel, hard time of winter. Him
Hmm.
opening his eyes, finally. He opened his eyes and he called his wolf Summer.
Hmm.
I believe, he was opening his eyes, to the world and how things are. He's getting out of being that sweet summer child.
And that does have, like, with him waking up out of that slumber, and knowing and saying Summer is the name of his direwolf. You can look at it as a metaphor for him waking up out of that summer dream, and now he sees the reality around him, and the only thing that has left Bran as far as his identity is being able to remember certain things prior to the accident. And even as of like, as far as the show is concerned, they still haven't addressed him remembering why he even fell in the first place and how he ended up in this whole situation. And so that's something that I'm very curious to see is if they might try to squeeze that somewhere in season 8, but I think that they probably just completely ran past that whole storyline and that whole development of his character as far as the show is concerned, which is unfortunate. But because I would have liked to see what would happen once he realized or once he remembered that it was pretty much Jaime that almost cost him his life. Like, if Jaime was to go back, like in season 8, back up to Winterfell, well, not back, but yeah, well, back. If he goes back to Winterfell, I'm wondering if maybe if Bran sees him, if that might trigger his memory and open up, maybe, I don't know if it would open a floodgate of emotions or memories or what. But it would be curious to see if they might be able to put that somewhere into season 8, and then they end up trying to not confiscate, but like to withhold Jaime for treason or something for trying to kill Bran in the first place. But seeing as how everybody is going to be fighting for their lives, I don't know. Something tells me that they'll just completely override that the conclusion of what happened to Bran and just kind of chalk it up as one of those stories that doesn't really need to have the ends tied up, which would suck.
Yeah. I think that they will address it again in the book, and they have, a little bit. Bran calls the person that pushed him out of the window the Golden Man. And I think that it may come back around in the books, but I don't think it's going to ever happen in the show.
No, not as if it hasn't already happened by season 7 and him coming back home and starting to look into the past of different things. Something tells me that they probably just overrode that and merged forward without tying that particular end up, which honestly they probably should have at least tried to dedicate a couple of minutes towards that. But I guess in their overall, it doesn't help their story, so it doesn't matter.
And that's a shame that it doesn't matter. That was something they could have done for Bran, in the last season. They didn't have him doing much of anything.
Yeah,
they
really.
didn't. I mean, even when he sat down and he did that whole looking back and seeing the marriage between Lyanna and Rhaegar, they really didn't do it that much service either. It was just like a small clip, and you don't really get to see the actual beauty of Rhaegar because it looks like it was something rushed and he just got out of bed, threw some clothes on, and went to go get married kind of situation. So it's, I don't know. I guess as far as the show is concerned, maybe the writers just got bored after a certain point. I don't know what the excuse is for that, but yeah, that's just kind of how I would tie into the Bran chapter is that they really didn't turn around and they didn't tie any of that in as far as the conclusion for this the show is concerned.
What about you, Lord of the Last Heart? What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much covered it all with that. Like, I just think that, when you look at, like, Bran, when it comes to, like, we were just talking about earlier with the Knights and thing, I think the first book, at least, like, the first half of the book, when you get to meet all the Star kids, like, even the ones that don't have POVs, you still, like, find out about them through the ones that do. And they all pretty much have this misconception and somewhat being naive of the way the real world works. And it's mainly because, when you're, from a royal house like that, you're sheltered more and you're not experiencing, you know, life as on life's terms, because everything is pretty much, you know, you're a step ahead, if not 10 steps ahead, because of the family you were born in. So it's
Mm.
like you got Rob, even Rob, and all of them. Like Rob has this misconception about war, like, you know, we're the Northmen Starks, like nobody can beat us kind of attitude. And you see what happened to him. Then you
Mhm.
look at like Bran with the knights, you Sansa with the whole, you know, thinking every knight and prince are the greatest people, and she just wants to be, you know, married to the beautiful Joffrey, you know, and she's even there for some of the, like, you know, asinine stuff that he does, but she just is so clouded by the idea of one day being a queen that it doesn't hit her until it's being done to her. And
Mhm.
and even when you look at Arya, like Arya thinks it's just easy, you know, for her to take the path of what men would do because she's so passionate about it, but she doesn't realize that all the things that come. It's like Brienne kind of. It's like they, even if you're the best swordsman around, they're always going to be a step back because you're a female. So every
Yep.
kid, like all their kids, have this misconception about how life is because of the fact that if you look, the last time their dad even went off to war was in the Greyjoy Rebellion, and that was like what 3 to 5 years after the Roberts Rebellion. So they've been sitting in, you know, in the North Winterfell. They're not in the middle of the rest of the Southern politics. Like, so they're pretty sheltered from everything. And I kind of think it's, I don't know. I think Ned, being Ned, it, you know, this is how he is. He's like introverted and really to himself. I think he should explain more to his kids that, you know, what life is really about. Like, I understand you want to tell your kids they could be anything they want, but even saying that now, you're like, oh, that's not so true. But then you don't want to, like, you know, beat them down. You want them to have some kind of motivation to be what they want to be. But in that kind of society, even though it's fantasy, it's based off medieval feudal society, and it's even less likely then that you can just be what you want. But because they are from the family they are, and how their family controls the North, they just say, all right, I want to be a knight, I'm going to be a knight. Whereas,
Yeah.
like, you got Duncan the Tall, this guy was 7 feet tall and built like a football player. And even he, like, was being questioned about, you know, were you really knighted and all, like, and here's a guy that's more than capable, uh, warriors wise, you know, and he's having trouble. So they don't get to see. That's why I like Duncan Egg a lot, because even though Aegon the Fifth didn't know he was going to be king, he thought there'd probably be no chance whatsoever, being the fourth son of a fourth son. Him going around and living a hedge knight's life made it better for him when he did rule, because he did a lot more for the common people, because he had that understanding of having to go through that. But these Stark kids never had to deal with it. And it even goes just deeper than that in their mom. Like, look at the decisions Catelyn makes without even, you know, looking into it whatsoever, just because the note came from your sister Liza. Okay, Liza was crazy from the jump. So even if, you know, you think maybe you didn't know the level of crazy she got to, like, you pretty much contradict. I was like, oh, it's my sister's, blah blah blah. But you say how you haven't talked to her in 5 years. Even your family, and just because they're family, are not exempt from changing. So you
Mhm.
don't know, you know, what was behind it, but you say, all right, because it's lies, it has to be true. And then, even worse than that, when Littlefinger does the thing with the cat's paw dagger, oh, like, you can trust Peter. The hell you can't. Like, I don't. And Ned's the
Well,
same thing. They make bad decisions, and with Ned, it's more based off his honor killing. But Catelyn, she is another, just like kind of like the kids, thinks she can just, you know, arrest and kidnap a son of Lord Paramount of the Westernlands, and nothing bad would happen from it because he broke the law. Like, I don't understand. They all talk about how the Lannisters are, but they'll make decisions that contradict what they know. Like, the Lannisters aren't like you. They're not loyal. They're going to do what they have to do to make their house come out on top. And I don't understand what made you forget this when you were doing all these stupid, you know, choices that ended up having, you know, you let go of Jamie, the only, you know, valuable everything you had, because if not, the red wedding might not ever happen. But here she goes and gives up the biggest, piece of gold because she really thinks that bring him back, they'll let go of her daughters. And that shows naive too, because they don't even know where Arya's at.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Like,
Hello?
oh, sorry, my my finger. When it comes to the Starks and being sheltered and naive, I think it's because like you said, Lord, is that they are up there in the north and they're not a part of all of the drama and all of the politics that are going on because they're so far north. And also because they are so far north and because it's cold and because they are rigid and they keep to their traditions, it makes it also like a turnoff for people from the southern areas to even go up north to even bother the Starks. So they have their own advantage by living that far up, but then they have a disadvantage as well because then the children don't end up having or seeing for themselves how other people interact with each other and the political game that's played between the houses. And then on top of that, you can also kind of blame Catelyn as well because she kind of instilled a lot of naivety in the children, on top of them already having this whole honor bound or duty bound kind of outlook on life. And so it just creates a situation to where the children, the Stark children, just are not prepared whatsoever for the things that came and happened to them. And it's kind of a tragedy because it's like when you look at it and you look at what happened to like the generation before them and how they pretty much got burned by the Mad King, and it's like they just keep having bad luck as far as the Stark family is concerned, but the Starks don't even sit down and take the time out to even look at any of that because I guess just the way that they were born or raised, you know.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, Ned to me really, really reinforced that because, he despised the game. He
Hmm.
despised every, the Game of Thrones and the scheming and the machinations and, you know, and all of that. So he would, definitely, not raise his children, with any of that. So
Yeah,
I agree with you that, Shelley, that they were completely, unprepared for all of this.
yeah.
They were unprepared for it all, and it it just it just became a mess, and it just became a mess, and I don't even understand. I can barely understand it. I can still, I can't even believe it even now. Even
And
after I've read the books over and over, and I can't believe it, and it's just a tragedy, just like you said.
and from sitting down and from reading it, like from the reader's perspective, it makes you kind of, it throws so many questions and it makes you kind of wonder and say, okay, well, why did they do it this way and they didn't do it that way? And one thing that I was curious is that why isn't it that at least for John, no one probably would have really cared to even help to foster that. But for Rob and Sansa, um, at least to had grown up or to be sent somewhere to see how other people behave in like the more southern areas of Westeros, like it just having all the children up there and sheltered away like that was one of the worst deals for the family as a whole. And if they didn't want to go too far south, that's understandable, but they still had people, like they could have had them over at the Erie, or they could have had them with someone someone that they had loyalty and trust with. Um would have ended up helping to at least show those children a different point of view or a different thought process that could have helped them out in their future. But they all had to learn it the hard way because they were all stuck up there in the north and taught a certain way. And in order to really show them what the real world or what the rest of the world is and how it is, they all had to be broken in one way or another.
Yes, that is very true, and it's just, yeah, you're
It sucks.
absolutely right. Him, being broken, having
Yeah.
to be broken, and they all, were broken, even
Yep.
all the way down to Rickon. He was breaking. He was the one that was going wild.
Yep.
And I think that he named his wolf the Shaggy Dog because a shaggy dog is a wild dog.
And
A
then
wild domesticated type of animal. And I
mhm.
think it was just, I think it's absolutely horrifying what happens to all of them. I mean,
Mhm.
we don't know Rickon's story, but you do see glimpses of Rickon, and in the show and in the books, and in the show, I think they did a pretty good job with Rickon because he was just as wild, as he was in the books, even though he was just, much younger in the books. But
Yeah.
in the books, you can tell that he is going to grow up very wild, and and I think they are going to bring him back in the book series, and I think he is going to be unbelievably like some wild lunatic type of man.
Yeah, like akin to like a wildling or something.
Yeah, I mean, even maybe even beyond, a wildling.
Yeah.
Maybe, something beyond, the Dothraki, or beyond something like that. Something like a human being, but very animalistic as well.
And if he has the same ability to warg like the rest of his family, then that could also end up determining just how savage he ends up becoming as well, because if it gets to a point where he wargs too much or he stays in a certain situation, it might get to a point where he might think that he is part animal. And yeah, but that's a little bit further down as far as reading is concerned to kind of figure that one out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very interested, in certain aspects of the story, and Rickon is definitely one of them. I want to see what he's going to turn into. I think he's
Mm-hmm.
going to be a wild man, a savage. That's
Yeah.
what I think he's going to be. Because, I mean, you can see it in the show,
Yeah,
and he's already looking like a wildling. But I think
yeah,
it's going to go even further for the books.
and that his whole demeanor just ends up kind of crazy and savage.
I mean, it's sad that this has happened to Bran. And it's only going to get worse for those children, for all of those children. And I just, knowing what's going to happen, and this chapter was the beginning of it all. This was the birth of the breaking of those children,
Hmm.
and they're all going to take a big fall. It's not just Bran.
No.
It's all, going to. I just feel so sorry for him, rereading it, and it was just sad to read. It really was. And it was frightening, and it scared me just like it did when the first time I read it and the first time I saw the show. And everyone is going to take a big fall, everyone. But hopefully, by the time Winter comes back around, things will get better. They will, by then, the kids are off in different directions and are doing their own thing. And I hope that they, I hope for the reunion, of course. And I hope that, that their experiences and everything that they all have been through will make them stronger and make them better. Because obviously, this fall that Bran takes, it did make him better, toward the end. He's unlocked his gifts. He's getting better, even though he'll never
Well,
walk again.
it
You
makes
know,
you wonder if maybe because of all of this and everything that they ended up going through, like you would think that Ned would have maybe tried to explain to his kids about what happens in like the southern kingdoms, but he ends up doing the complete opposite and trying to shelter his kids. So now that his kids had to have like a, a dose of reality, and they've had to go through so much hardships, it makes me hope that the children, once they get back together, if they'll keep that in mind, and it might reflect the next generation of Stark children to understand and to have a better notion of just the political game and what happens and how to survive it, instead of trying to shelter the children away, because sheltering them away up north, they'll have to eventually come down, and if they don't have anything but northern kind of mentality, then it's just going to end up being disastrous all over again. So maybe like breaking the chain kind of, as far as the Starks are concerned, you know.
Cindy Sammy came back to us. Thank you, Cindy, for coming back with us. If you have a question, please put it in the chat. If you have a question, yeah, put it in the chat, and we'll try to answer it. Yeah, I mean, it was just, one of those chapters that was just heartbreaking. He didn't see it coming, and none of them will see it coming later on. It was a very good foreshadowing chapter of things to come. And I really, really appreciated that. Do any of you have any questions?
No, not that I can think of.
Okay.
No, like the chapter itself was kind of self-explanatory. I mean, it did shed a little bit more than what the actual show had shown, as far as like Bran's mentality and how he thought of his siblings and his what he considered his future, but obviously it wasn't set in stone for him because it wasn't reflected as far as his direwolf is concerned and being able to name him. But compared to that and the detail of how he ended up falling, and the discussion of Lysa and how crazy she was and how they were trying to plot to deal with her and to deal with Eddard, and yeah, so a lot of it was kind of just a little more of a explanation to what I've seen in the show.
Yeah, it was a lot. Yeah, I agree with that. They didn't really go into his mentality. They didn't go into his desire to be a knight.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I didn't see any desire in him to be a knight. I didn't think that they were even going to take him to King's Landing in the show. They cut out a lot. They cut out a lot in the show.
From I think in the show, either they were talking, I think he was trying to push going, but his mother was trying to insist on him staying because he was still too young to go all the way that far without her. And I think that's kind of how that ended up. Like they were still debating what to do with as far as Bran, because she still wanted him there and she still wanted the yeah. So she still wanted the kids, or at least the two babies, from what I understand. But I could have that completely wrong too. So
no, it's been a minute since I watched that first episode. But
since
yeah,
I've watched the season.
As far as the show goes, I didn't really see any desire for him to be a knight, or if he was even going to King's Landing. I think they were trying to push it, and I think Catelyn wanted him to stay, but they didn't really go into that aspect.
No, they barely mentioned or they barely had Bran even mention that he wanted to be a knight as far as his career, like his future career. They didn't dive too much deeper into the Bran story.
No, it was pretty much all about his fall afterwards.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess in a sense that's good, because after the fall it really does give Bran like a sense of self and identity, like a real sense of identity that he didn't have beforehand. So I guess that's why they emphasize that more in the story, or in the show, but they didn't have a before kind of look at Bran. So a lot of show watchers, we end up kind of missing that, as far as what Bran was trying to figure out who he was before, and versus what happened after the accident and who he became.
Cindy Sammy, obviously doesn't have any questions. I think maybe we can go ahead and wrap it up. We've hit the 2-hour mark.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was a wonderful, wonderful chapter. It was so good to, get back into his head, before, he became, before he, got on the road to being the three-eyed, the three-eyed crow. And it was good to see that, that innocence there, and the hope, and the looking forward to the future. And I really enjoyed reading that. It was actually, very bright, and it had a happy feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
Before everything took that dark turn at the end. And it was good to see that. I'm glad that they, had him looking forward to what his life could bring, instead of, he's sad about the past, but he was looking forward. And I'm glad for that. They needed, it was really good. I thought it was really clever. Sometimes you can see chapters going bad, but I think in this instance, it was good that he had a little bit of goodness in the beginning of the chapter, and a bit of happiness, and how he felt, and that hope that he had, for Child's Hope. Now, next week we are doing Tyrion 1. I think Jennifer said she was going to do that chapter. And we saw a little bit about Tyrion, and him going on a hunt with the royal party, which I thought was very strange as well, because I didn't think he would have the courage, or even be accepted into going, on a hunt with the royal party. He didn't, I thought it was kind of strange him going. I have expected him to stay, be told to stay there, like John and the girls and the little boys. But apparently he managed to go. So we're going to see Tyrion's point of view next week. Very interesting character, Tyrion Lannister. He's very jovial on top, and very dark and sinister underneath.
Yep.
So I think we're going to cut it out and cut it short. So you two want to do your outros?
Yeah, Lower Last Hearth, Tony, thank you for letting me be a part of this chapter discussion tonight. This is a really good chapter to discuss because of all the things that happened. And I look forward to next week. I really like these discussions. It's nice, and down key. We don't have to worry about fighting people to say stuff and all. But so I appreciate it, and I want to thank you for that, Misha.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us tonight. I know you're very busy, and I know a lot of people were very busy this week, and we couldn't have a full panel, but I'm happy that you managed to make it with us for tonight. And as am I for you, Shelley. I know it's been busy, and it's been busy and crazy and hectic for me too.
Yeah, dealing with these kids and having to do dinner and help my sis go to work and everything. So I do apologize for that first hour of not really being on, but I enjoy these streams too, and it's just nice. It kind of helps us to go back and to look and to see and to get a refresher through the books, and for me to actually start reading the books. And it just shows a different perspective, period. So yeah, I like it. And thank you so much again, Misha, for having everybody on.
Yes, thank you all for joining us. And thank you, Cindy Sammy, for joining us in the chat. Thank you, Jennifer. I think we're going to have a special guest next week. I'm not sure, but we'll see. And next week we are doing the Tyrion 1 chapter. It's very interesting. This Tyrion Lannister is a very interesting character, a character with great adaptation and great longevity. And I can't wait to read his chapter next week. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to my panel. Thank you to the people that came in the chat. Thank you to my subscribers. Thank you so much. And I hope you enjoyed this live stream. I got some new subscribers, and I'm happy for that. So thank you all so very much. Good night, everyone, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Good night.
Thank you.